ultimate hack of all hacks in terms of podcasting. If you want an opportunity, if you want a job, if you want to work with somebody, if you want a company to know who you are, if you want to know the CEO of who you work for, start a podcast and just interview them. Just interview them.
I'm trying to give me a bag. I'm trying to give me a bag. I'm trying to give me a bag. I'm trying to give me a bag.
What's up? You are now listening to FY Fly the podcast, and I'm your host, Hassan Thomas, along with Remy, and we are here to share tools on how millennials can budget, save, invest, and understand student debt and credit to achieve financial freedom. If you're a high school student, college student, or someone who's interested in gaining more financial insight, this podcast is for you.
I'm trying to give me a bag. I'm trying to give me a bag. I'm trying to give me a bag. I'm trying to...
What's up, my FY Fly folks out there? How y'all doing? I hope y'all doing all right. Welcome to the FY Fly podcast. My name is Hassan Thomas, aka the kid that did and the man that can, baby. And today we're gonna be chopping it up with one of the kings of podcasting, podcast coach, award-winning podcaster himself, Mr. Shawn Anthony. How you doing, brother? How you?
Hey, man, listen, I'm excited to be here. I think you got a phenomenal platform. I even like your intro, man. It kind of remind me of my club partying days. You kind of sound like Young LA. So let's do it.
Say Young LA, but I ain't heard him in a bit. Yes, sir, man. We're going to get into it, man. We here on FY Fly, and I'm super happy to have you here, man. What we do on our platform, we really like to skip the fluff and get right into this good stuff, man. That sound good?
Let's do it, man. No fluff.
Bet. So when I first got into this podcast game, like we was talking before the show, man, you were literally one of the first people that I saw. So like when I jumped in, I typed in, financial literacy, typed in podcasting, like as far as like hashtags. And this is a quick gem for anybody listening. Whenever you trying to get into a new lane, kind of find the people that are already doing it, that are already successful in it, and take some of the stuff that they're doing and put your own fly spin on it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I did, man. And I'm super happy to have you here. And my first question is, what led up to you choosing this podcasting game as your area of expertise? Like, why did you do that? Because I feel like, honestly, podcasting didn't become super mainstream until like 2019, 2020. So why did you choose that?
Yeah, it's so crazy you say that. In 2018, when I started podcasting was lame. You had people who had no idea what it was. They was like, I stumbled across podcasting as I was going through my corporate journey of just excelling and being promoted. I was promoted 6 times in 4 years. And this was after, I spent majority of my life learning marketing since the age of 14 when I was throwing parties. The very first party I ever threw in my life, I was 14 years old. I learned the party game from my older brother, and I made $6,000, so, and that was on a high school graduation party. And that led to a long marketing career. It led to me going off being known as a party promoter. But while I was off in the corporate, after I had, finished things up being a party promoter, I stumbled across that Purple Weird app at a gas station, and I was driving 6 hours away, back and forth while my wife was pregnant, and luckily I didn't miss anything important. But what I did do is I stumbled across the podcasting app. So all these amazing guys, Ed Milet, Evan Carmichael, Chris Drama Path, I say those names respectfully because all those guys have been on my show, but all of them were white. They didn't look like you and I. And I knew that I could reach people that they couldn't reach, and I would get these job reviews and people would tell me, yo, your collaboration skills are crazy. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take all the skills I have and I'm going to go get all of this game and I'm going to give it back to my people. And the crazy thing about that, fam, is I knew before I did it, I had to be attached to a mission. Even back in 2018, I had to be attached to a mission in order to do this for the longevity, because I was like, I don't know if money coming from this. I just want to do this because I see the impact. And we created Schools Over Now with the podcast.
Yes, sir, man. So while you was talking, I got a David Shands type question up here, man. So what skill sets did you use to translate into, like, what specific skill sets did you use to transfer into this podcasting game that you learned from the turning up, from the turn life and the party promoters? What skills did you use?
Oh, by far, how to attract an audience. number one, right? You think about it from the party game. Like, you got to do some things to get that line wrapped around the corner. You got to do some things to get the pretty girls in the VIP. You got to do some things to know, all right,
before the event happened.
Before it happens. Before it happens, you got to do something. You got to recruit. I had a 30 people street team, that were knocking on doors for me, telling people to come out to, this random party every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So all those skills are transferable. So the marketing is key. I think also the collaboration, right? Like, you have to collaborate when you're throwing parties. Like, you have to collaborate with, the owners of the venue. You have to collaborate with, maybe there's a sorority or a fraternity that you're bringing there with you. You have to also organize contracts, right? But all those skills transfer to me doing exactly what we're doing now, asking each other questions, answering the question the best way I can, but also making sure that you get value in it.
For sure. And I feel like for me personally, some of the skills that I've taken from football has transitioned into the skills that I'm doing now with podcasting, speaking, books, having that resilience, having that determination to continue when everybody else is asleep or everybody else is partying. I'm just realizing all these different things, and it's a grind, man. It's a true grind. And I want to know from you, what do you feel like, what type of consistency, what type of determination do you have to make and create a successful podcast?
I think one is another word, discipline. That's what you also learn from football. And another thing too, I think that's not really being spoken a lot about, is that you're doing better than what you think you were doing. So many people are stuck on the big download numbers. I mean, it doesn't take much to end up in the top 10% of podcasts. All you have to do is stay consistent and remain at a certain point where you're getting 50, 100 plus listens. You're already beating everybody else. They're giving up, right? So I think a lot of people have to understand that and not be so blinded by seeing the mega podcast stars. And I think even with the mega podcast stars that we're seeing now, a lot of them are reaching a height where they are no longer relatable. And I think that makes it so exciting if you're listening to this, if you're somebody trying to figure it out, because now they've gotten to a point when they start talking, you're like, what are they talking about? And so I think it's important as you rise in the growth of it, that you remain humble, that you remain the same person that you came in. And I think at the same time, you also realize that there's a younger version of you that can have a better listener experience if you continue to talk to that person.
That's gems right there, brother. And I want to touch on what you mentioned, about for those folks who are not the top 1 or top 2% of podcasters, because I want to talk about, how to really create a great podcast, how to create a podcast that can be sponsored and, bring in brand sponsorships and things of that nature. So for everybody listening, we did a podcast 101 with Jalen Clark, one of the hosts of the Black Wealth Renaissance. We did that. So definitely go check out that for like the basics of how to start a podcast. But with Shawn Anthony, we finna get down to the nitty gritty. You hear me? So talk to us about, what are some of the keys to getting those brand sponsorships, sponsorships from businesses, brands, different things of that nature. What are some of the keys to that?
I think some of the keys is sometimes you don't have to think about the big brand or the big sponsor. It's probably somebody right now listening to your show who's within a 20-mile radius of you, who's ready to give you money. And the reason why they're ready to give you money is because, one, you could do a couple of things. You could have them on your platform and feature their business. You could highlight their business. You can help bring new revenue to them beyond just the commercial. You could sit down and do a 15-minute interview, even at the quality of this, and it's just high quality video, and capture it and give them pieces of content to help promote their business, their local coffee shop, their local gym, their local restaurant. Like, how do they become a business owner? You're giving them content and you're also sharing it. So I think that's one hack is to not always think about the big one. Or, I was listening to $1 million worth of game and they just had this vodka company, like,
$8 million.
It's levels to it. It's levels to this, right? So I think that's one of the most overlooked things as well. And I think also too, maybe even putting together a kit where you're offering the opportunity, whether it's a pre-roll, a mid-roll, or an outro roll. The pre-roll is usually the highest, always the highest. The mid-roll,
kind of like a media kit.
Yeah, like a media kit. So like a pre-roll is like saying before this interview started, you're right. Before this interview started, let's say you had somebody that wanted to give you, $500 or $1,000 or whatever. And they say, look, you know what? You're sitting down with Shawn. He's talking about podcasting. I have a new microphone I'm trying to promote, right? They will pay you more to get the commercial to happen before you start talking to me, right? And then the second option of pay will be the mid-roll. So the mid-roll is opportunity for another brand deal. And then the outro, right? The very end of the show, that commercial will be the least expensive because listeners don't tend to listen and stick around for that long of a time span. They usually start to drift off at right about 30 to 45 minutes. So those are ways of kind of looking at it. And I think a lot of people are just overlooking the money that's right in front of them, chasing the big dollar sign.
Yeah, man, you got to start. Everybody listen, you got to start, where you are. And the thing that I have a quote on my phone, like a little reminder, where it says, success is what you make it. Take it how it comes. So I got that from Pusha T. Shout out Pusha T. So, but why I have that quote on my phone is I want everybody to realize that kind of what you said. You're doing better than what you think you are. So it's okay if you have that 500 listener podcast, at 1,000 listener podcast.
Yes,
that could be 500 customers for that local small business that you mentioned. You know what I mean?
And that could make or break that business, right? You hand a company 500 new customers today, they might not even be able to handle it. And so I think that's important to make sure that we're talking about that more.
Yeah, man. And I want to tell you something that podcasting has recently done for me.
Okay.
So, and everybody listening as well. So I interviewed the largest financial wellness company for college students on my podcast called iGrad. By the end of the interview, they were so impressed by me. They was ready to take things to the next level because they're getting into the NIL space. For anyone listening who doesn't know what NIL is, that is name, image, and likeness. So college students are now able to get paid. College athletes are now able to get paid off their name, image, and likeness. So they were like, man, we're about to jump into this space, and we're looking for somebody who's not too far, who's graduated college, not too far removed, looking for somebody who was a previous athlete, and looking for somebody who's passionate about financial literacy.
Wow.
I was like, are y'all talking about me? So literally I interviewed them in May, literally in June, they offered me a full-time position, but also, and this is where I'm going with this story, also, guess what?
What's that?
They want me to start a podcast for them.
Wow. See, I love this, man. It's a true testament of the space. I mean, it's a true testament of the space, knowing your worth, knowing your value, what you're into, and being exactly who you are and doing exactly two things that we said earlier in the podcast is having discipline and being consistent. And that aligns everything you're saying. You know what? What really I think is the ultimate hack of all hacks in terms of podcasting. If you want an opportunity, if you want a job, if you want to work with somebody, if you want a company to know who you are, if you want to know the CEO of who you work for, start a podcast and just interview them. Just interview them.
Yeah.
Listen, just interview them. I don't care if 2 people listen to your show. The ability to do that and have them know who you are turns out in such a positive way, right? You're a perfect example of that.
Big facts, man. And, you mentioned some great podcasters. You mentioned, Tom and Lewis and Pat, like you said.
Yep.
So where do you see this podcast game going? Like, boom, 2033 podcast. Like, where do you see the podcast game going?
The podcast game is going to continue to evolve. More people are going to continue to get into it. I think more people will get into it and realize that they need something while doing it. They'll realize, oh, okay, my consistency isn't there. My discipline isn't there. I want to keep doing this, but how do I keep doing this? I haven't figured out editing. I haven't figured out, publishing. And a lot of times the reason they haven't figured it out yet is because their passion for what they're doing is not strong enough. I've even worked with some multi-millionaires who even struggled to promote their podcast after they've spent thousands of dollars to shoot it, right? Yeah. So it's like, It's like you got to have a mission and a hunger beside it and why you're doing it and realize that, hey, look, it's possible. But I think it's going to continue to grow. I think it's going to be a huge opportunity for people behind the scenes to definitely, you're a videographer, if you're an editor, I think there's going to be huge opportunities for you. And I think more people are definitely going to jump into the space.
I love it, man. I love it. I have a couple more questions for you.
Course.
I want to stick on this money topic. You know, we mentioned sponsorships, but what are some other ways that people can make money from having a podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one, if you are a coach or you're someone with a skill set, the way I made money podcasting before I even coached anybody was selling my stuff. I had no advertisers. I had no brand deals. I had no sponsors. So I myself was my advertiser. Before the show started, I would tell you about an amazing lead magnet, which is my free guide, a free podcast starter kit. You know, a lot of people will sign up through there. And then of course they would go through a funnel. And then after that, I would talk about, you know, a coaching program I have. So if you're a coach or someone, talk about the products you have, the resources you have. You know, don't make your episode all about it. But if your audience is listening to you, they already trust you. You know, so I think don't underestimate that. That could be a serious moneymaker.
Big facts, man. And one thing that
merch too.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. One thing that I've done from my podcast, I've allowed it to transition me into other lanes. I used my first book was called 24 Lessons. It was called From College to Coach, 24 Lessons Learned During the Lockdown. So I put in 5 lessons that I learned, but those other 19 lessons were from my podcast guests. So
you got there's a strategy that was used by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, I heard. I heard about that. Yeah, I heard about Tim from. Is he the one with the 4-hour work week, or he got another book?
4-Hour Work Week. He has another one called Tools of Titans, which if you're a podcaster is the ultimate book of how you can use podcast guests to make a book. And then Tools of Titans, he has a lot of the guests he's picked is a really, really wide angle book. And it has all of the gems he really learned from them and their social media handles. So that was dope.
Yep, that's literally how I did mine. And that was even before I even knew about Tim, you know, so that's another thing right there that people can do, you know, use that podcast to catapult you in different lanes, especially if you're still talking about the same thing. I had a podcast on financial literacy, which I then wrote a book on financial literacy, and then I started speaking on financial literacy. So whatever lane that you're in, use that podcast to then catapult you into newer lanes that can bring impact and revenue.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think that's the smartest move ever.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. So I have a couple more questions. You know, as we mentioned, this is FY Fly, a show about money, entrepreneurship, and investing. So I need you to be authentic. I need you to be transparent with us, man. I need you to give us a good money habit that you have and a bad money habit that you have that we can cut off. Let us.
All right, cool. All right, cool. So a good money habit that I've learned. Well, there's this book called Profit First, and had I read this book before I made $1 in entrepreneurship, my life would be different. I would have way more money than I ever had. It's called Profit First. If you don't get anything from the interview, just go get that book. And it tells you how to allocate money as soon as you get it. It tells you exactly the percentage you should be putting aside. It tells you the percentage that you should be putting into a profit account. In fact, I'll pull up and I'll tell you at least what 5 of the accounts are called while I have you here. Guys, if you watch, I'm literally logging into my bank account while I'm on the phone. And while I'm on, all right, so basically you would have in your account 5 different accounts. This is what you'll learn from the Profit First book. So in those accounts, you want to have a certain percentage. You have an OPEX account, which is your operating expense account. You have a profit account, which is typically when you're starting off, it has different categories, but you want to give at least 5% towards that. And you'll have
profit account is going towards
profit first.
Investing.
No, it's profit first. So if I gave you, literally, if I gave you $100, right, you need to always take 5% as profit and just put it away. And then it talks about a tax account. So a lot of times people don't, when they have expenses as an entrepreneur, no one's thinking about taxes till it's taxes time. And Uncle Sam is going to get his. So it's a tax account. And a tax account is typically about 15%, right? And then you can also have an account that you call it something yourself. I like to call it the vault, where you just stack money into and put it in there. But Profit First, it tells you about the percentages you should have. So I think that's definitely something you should look at. Outside of that, I'll tell you another money habit that I found to be very helpful. A lot of times when you can't see the money, you keep spending the money. I can give you $1,000 a day, but you're gonna say, "Oh, I need a camera. Oh, I could use, a tablet, or I could you just start thinking about things you should spend and get it." Right. But what I found out for myself personally, this goes back to the kid from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, 252, is shoebox money, man. You can't go away from that, man. You can't go away from that. And some of the old school strategies back in the day still work today. So you still have all your accounts, but whether it's a shoebox, whether it's a safe, wherever it is for you, I think you should always be able to take some and put it away, just because a rainy day is always going to be somewhere around the corner. People say don't save rainy days, save for whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. But as long as you still got that shoebox stash, I think you're in good shape. And I think a bad habit that you should definitely cut out is to just be going out to eat all the time and not being aware of it, right? Okay. I think the way cost of living is nowadays, just to walk outside of the house is about $100. But and don't try to catch an Uber. It's gonna probably turn to $200. Depending on what city you're in. So I think being aware of where your money is go. Whether there's a money management app that can help you, definitely do that.
Okay, so do you mind if I push back on one thing?
Yeah. What's that?
Okay, so I do agree that we should have some liquid money. And when I say liquid money, I don't mean melted money. What I mean is that we should have some money in our home, or paper money in our home that we can't access if the banks or something goes crazy. Mm-hmm. But honestly, that shoebox money, that needs to be somewhere making money for you.
Oh, for sure.
As far as a high yield savings account, an investment account. I save my emergencies. How you talked about emergencies, I save my emergency fund in Acorns. Mm-hmm. So what Acorns is, the Acorns app, what Acorns is for everybody listening, every time you spend money, you save money. So you link your debit card, you can link your credit card. Every time you spend that money, it does a roundup. So say, we go to Wendy's and we get a little 4 for $4.
Oh, they $5 now, the $5 biggie bag.
No, thanks. They did upgrade that joint. So say you get the $5 biggie bag, taxes on that joint is $5.40. Mm-hmm. What Acorns would do, they would round that 60 cents up to $6, and they will put that 60 cent into an investment account for you, so it's automated. So for everybody listening, I do agree with Shawn. We definitely need some type of cash in our home, just in case the government go crazy, something crazy happen. But that money needs to be, because in this time and age, we can't save our way to become a millionaire.
No way.
Money got to be working for us.
No way.
That's the only thing.
Also, I think too, educating yourself, right? Understanding what works for you. There's a book outside of Profit First. There's another book that should probably be number 2 if you're talking money. Mm-hmm. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind is a book that I read this book, and I actually got this book from a millionaire friend. I asked him, I said, "Hey, look, what's one book you read?" Her name was Emily Vavra. I said, "Hey, look, what's one book you read that changed your life, changed how you move, changed everything? That you read it all the time." It's by T. Harv Eker, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and it's a book you probably should listen to on Audible at least once a month. And it talks about so many different money strategies, so many different principles, so many different things to say to yourself that you could be talking yourself out of things. It talks about looking at even 20% and saying, look, this 10% might be for savings, but this 10% is for, I'm going to save as much as I can for this month. At the end of the month, we're going to do something fun. We're just going to ball out. We're gonna go crazy. So that might be someone's shoebox money. You know what, baby, I got a couple hundred saved up. Let's go out to, Kabuto or whatever, Japanese place, do something fun, stay at a resort. But Secrets of the Millionaire Mind is a book I keep spinning the block on and going back every time. I finish. All right, let me go listen again. I might catch something else. So I would highly recommend that. T. Harv Eker.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And a gem that you mentioned in there that I hope doesn't go over people's head is putting that fun into your budget. We know we're gonna have fun. We know we're gonna do it. Yep. We know, with the bad habit, we know we're gonna eat out.
No,
so we just put that into your budget, because we're gonna do it anyway, man. And this is FY Fly, man. So we can't have you on here and not ask our famous final question. I'm gonna tell you 2 quotes, and I need you to let me know which one is more accurate in your opinion. All right. All right. So the first one is more money, more problems, like Biggie. And the second one is money can't buy happiness. Which one do you agree with most?
Man, that's hard, man. You know,
Yes,
I talk in rap lyrics. We didn't talk about this. Me and my brother, we had this thing our whole life, and this goes back to parties. We always had inside jokes, and we also felt a certain way about certain things. We would recite a lyric and kind of knew what we were thinking. So when you said more money, more problems, I know that's Biggie, but there's another rapper who said more money, more problems, I invite distress. And I thought about him when you said that. Yeah. And there is more money. More money does bring more problems, but money doesn't buy happiness. I know a lot of people who are 8-figure entrepreneurs who would love the life I have. And not the monetary life I have, but the life I have of being married, being with, having kids, them not having none of those things, So money doesn't buy happiness. So I would say that's probably the most accurate. Because if you had enough money, you could spend to make a lot of the problems go away. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm leaning towards the money doesn't buy happiness, because I've seen so many people, even people who are 8-figure entrepreneurs, who still second guess themselves, who still don't think they can do certain things. And that just shows me that they might not be as happy as I thought they were.
Man. This was so great, man. I really appreciate it. I knew it was gonna be fire though. I knew once we got it in this setting, man, I knew the Joe was gonna be fire. So thank you so much for joining the show. If you have any final words, any final takeaways, go ahead, and also let them know where they can reach you.
Yeah, man. First and foremost, I appreciate you for having me on your show. I love the questions you asked. I see a lot of potential in what you're doing. I'm definitely going to send some people your way. And I want to leave people with this thought. And I say it on Schools Over Now with podcasts all the time, in every single show. And that's dream it, believe it, go out and get it. You got to dream that it's possible. You got to believe in you when nobody's believing in you. But you got to be actionable though. You have to go out here and get it. So I want to leave y'all with that. If you enjoyed this show, check me out at Shawn Anthony _. If you're starting a podcast or already have one and you're like, you know what? I wanted this thing to run on autopilot. I want all of my editing done, the publishing done. I want reels, content. Check out podpromax.com. Appreciate you, fam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. For everybody listening, I know we dropped a lot of gems today, but if you can take one or two things that you can really get active with and implement them, I promise those small habits will turn into large results over time. So thank y'all so much again. And y'all already know we need y'all to stay safe, stay invested, and stay FYI fly. We'll see y'all next week. Yes, sir.
Thank you all for listening to FY Fly, the podcast, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Tune in next week for more financial literacy insights with our special guests. Please visit our website, social media platforms, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at FYI Fly Podcast. That's FYI FLI Podcast. See y'all next week and stay fly.